Hey everybody, welcome to this Photoshop tutorial brought to you by tutvid.com. And as you can probably tell, we're doing things a little bit differently this week because we got a camera out and we're doing stuff with a camera. You like when I do that? Anyway, today we're going to be talking just about all of the new features in Photoshop CC 2015.5. There's a lot of really cool stuff. There's a lot of stuff that they just flat out updated. We're going to try to cover just about everything, big stuff and little stuff. Now, before we jump into it, there's a course over on my website. In fact, the link popped up right about there, where you can click on it, you can go over, you can pick up a copy of the course yourself, and if you do, you help support Tutvid, help me keep cranking content out like this, and it's just super cool. Anyway, let's get into the tutorial here. So, as you can see, I've got these two ladies here on the screen, and the reason I'm using this photo is because the new face-aware Liquify tool in Photoshop allows us to do some interesting things to even multiple faces in photos. The idea is that it will automatically detect faces in your photos and allow you to liquify specific portions of the face, like the eyes, the nose, the lips, the whole jawline and hairline and things like that. A lot of really neat stuff you can do. So let's take a look at this. First thing we're going to do, however, is right-click on the layer and just choose to convert it to a smart object because, like most filters, virtually every filter, in fact, it can be applied as a smart filter. So we go Filter Liquify now, and up will pop the Liquify dialog box. Now, take note, Photoshop is only picking up one of these faces, and this is because her face here is tilted so much to one side, and you might be saying, well, it's really not that much. And I understand you, it's not, but Photoshop actually is recommending that you tilt the entire image or the face or whatever if you want to use this feature to make it as upright as possible. Now we're picking up her, so let's work with her first, and then I'll show you what I would do for a tilted face like this. So you can see we can just simply hover over features of the face. We also have all of these different sliders where we can just, play with the eyes, nose, mouth, face. And by the way, I should mention that if Photoshop automatically identifies 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 faces, you can select different faces using this drop-down menu right here. But because Photoshop's only selected one face here, or only detected one face, we only have face number 1. So just keep that in your back pocket if you love using these sliders. Anyway, we can grab any part of her face here, like her cheeks. We can make her cheeks a little wider. We can make her jawbone much narrower. We could push her chin in if we wanted. We could widen her lips. We could make the top lip taller, shorter. We could make the bottom lip bigger, smaller. We could make her smile a little bit more, which is like the most horrific plastic surgery smile you've ever seen, or look a little bit more stout. I kind of like it, sort of, well, it's a little bit too much, I'll leave her about where she was. You can also widen the nose or make the nose a little more narrow. You can push the nose up, pull the nose down, do whatever you like. Then you can just, do things like sizing the eyes. Now, the eyes are kind of interesting because when you work with the eyes, they both are going to move together. So you don't have to worry about doing something to one eye and then flipping over and trying to make sure you do the exact same thing to the other eye. So I'll just make this a little bit bigger. Maybe I can pull up, maybe pull down on the eyes a little bit, push them in a little bit. If you make the eyes too big, it's really going to make her look pretty bad. So we can go ahead and hit OK, and it's going to quickly apply that change. And we can see over here in the Layers panel, sure enough, boom, Liquify. Great, there's before, and there is after. Now, of course, the next step is going to be the girl here who has her face on a little bit more of an angle. The problem is, something that I've noticed, at least in my short time playing with this newest version of Photoshop, when you're working with a smart object in particular with this face-aware Liquify feature, Photoshop tends to jump the faces around a little bit. So what I'm going to do right here is go ahead and just right-click on my layer and choose to rasterize this layer. And I'm going to, sadly, need to apply the Liquify to her face with this layer as a dumb object, as a raster layer, as a non-smart object. So here's actually what I'm going to do. I need to still rotate the image. So I'm going to zoom out just a little bit here. Command or Control T to bring up the transform handles. And I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to click the image once, maybe click the image twice, and then I'll move this down so her face is kind of down here in the center. Now, the reason I held down Shift when I selected this image is because now after Liquify, in order to get it back to a perfectly level image, I can just hold down Shift again and go click 1, click 2, and it's perfectly level again. All right, so that just makes that super easy and a piece of cake to do later on. All right, so we have her face. Now we can go back to Filter, Liquify, and when we bring up Liquify, check it out. It's going to find her face, and it's not going to find the other girl's face. So let's zoom in here in the Liquify dialog box, and we can do whatever we want to her face. So I'll probably narrow up her cheeks. I'll pull her hair down a little bit. We'll pull her chin out a little bit. We'll tuck the cheekbones in a touch. We'll push the nose up a little bit. Make the eyes, ooh, it's a little bit too big. Make the eyes just kind of like that. Maybe, something like that. We'll make the lower lip actually a little bit smaller. We'll widen her mouth just a touch. Something like that is great. And then I can go ahead and hit OK. Now, of course, this is not a smart object, so we can't go and just, turn it on, turn it off, edit it later on. That's kind of sad. But like, for instance, with this image, if this was a smart object and I just rotated the smart object, right now her face would look great. But as soon as I go Command or Control T, hold down Shift and click to get this image back to where I had it, and then commit that change, Photoshop would actually take the facial liquify from her and jump it over to this girl. So it's just a little quirky. You're going to want to watch for things like that. So that's pretty much it with face liquify. I should add that you may want to go into your settings and make sure that you're even able to do this. So Photoshop Preferences, and under Performance, you want to go ahead and choose Advanced Settings and make sure that Use Graphics Processor to Accelerate Computation. That needs to be ticked on. So go ahead and hit OK and OK, and you will be ready to use the Face-Aware Liquify feature in Photoshop. Now, before I let you go, I should just remind you, Adobe says that this feature does work best when the subjects are looking as into the camera as possible. And I should also note that the Reconstruct and Restore All features in the Liquify dialog box, they don't work for these face-aware liquifies. They work for everything else, but not the face-aware stuff. So that's pretty much everything you're going to need to know about the new face-aware liquify feature in Photoshop. Let's move on to the next thing. So the next brand new feature in Photoshop is the Select and Mask workspace, and this is pretty cool. It sort of takes the bulk of the selection and masking and complex selection, things like Refine Edge, and merges it into one easy-to-use workspace. In fact, it has replaced the entire Refine Edge dialog box that we've gotten to know so well. So let's take a look at it here in Photoshop. We've got this girl with this flowing golden gown, and let's say we want to make a selection of the gown to change the color of it. Instead of being gold, it needs to be silver, all right? Here's what we do. Well, the hotkey to jump into the mode is Command-Option-R. That would be Control-Alt-R on the PC, and you can see we enter this Select and Mask mode. I'm actually going to get out of that. I'm going to show you here. It's under Select, Select and Mask. Note the hotkey. Command Option or Control Alt R. It's mixing me up here. All right, so we can go into Select and Mask. Now we have a couple of view modes right off the bat. Onion skin is actually kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of neat. We'll probably end up using it here, but you can also just do something like a colored overlay or marching ants or whatever you like. I'm gonna roll with onion skin though, because you'll see how it kind of works. I'm gonna boost. Well, actually, I'm gonna reduce the transparency. Excuse me, to 10%. This is gonna really help what I'm selecting pop. You're gonna see what I mean in just a moment. I'm also preemptively going to tick on Smart Radius, and that's going to boost our radius to 10 pixels. That means it's going to look kind of around the edges of wherever we're selecting, 10 pixels on either side, so it can kind of get an idea of where the edge is. So it's going to look over a 10 pixel area. All right, so with that in mind, we're going to grab just the top tool here. It's just the quick selection brush. We also have a few other brushes we'll talk about in a moment. But the quick selection brush, you're going to see here, I can just paint over her dress, and as I paint over the dress, it's coming very much into kind of this sharp colored full opacity, and just letting me know, like, yeah, okay, all this stuff here that you're painting over, you are in fact going to be selecting. So you can see I selected a little bit of the background there. No big deal. We can hold down the Alt or Option key, paint over that, and just knock that right out. So that, boom, knocked it out. Cool. In fact, we got some of her hand. We can knock some of her hand out. There's going to be a little bit of this selection we're going to have to touch up as we kind of move forward here. Anyway, so I'm not too concerned, but let's go ahead and just paint over the dress. Let's get the bulk of the dress selected, then we'll worry about other stuff. In fact, let's boost the transparency a little bit, and you'll see the more we boost the transparency, the more we're kind of seeing exactly what we've selected. But that's going to make it difficult to select the rest of the dress. We can boost transparency in a moment. Maybe I'll take it and put it around 25. 25 is kind of cool. All right, so I'm going to come down here and grab the dress that's kind of touching the floor. It's a little messy, but, hey, it is what it is. All right, come up here and grab the top portion of the dress, like so. All right, cool. That all looks pretty good. Now, it still needs to be adjusted a little bit. We'll knock out this little bit of the wall. Again, hold down Alt or Option, paint over that little bit. Great. All right, so now that we've done that, you can go ahead and you can apply some global refinements to your selection, or what will be the beginnings of your selection. So smoothing, what smoothing is going to do is just generally smooth the edges of your image. Any kind of pixel variation or roughness on the actual selection itself, any sort of crunchiness. If you ever get an object you cut out and the edges are kind of crunchy and pixelated looking, you might want to boost smoothness just a little. So we'll give it a little bit of a boost, because we do generally have smooth flowing lines anyway. We don't need exacting, precise detail, and that might be a little sacrilegious to say that, but don't worry too much. Feather, that's going to literally blur the edge of the selection. We don't want to do that. Contrast is going to make the edge of the selection a little sharper, and then shift edge does just that. It shifts the edge of the selection. Now we also have output settings. Decontaminate color will decontaminate the colors around the edge, help drop away some of the background color. Now it's going to force you to output to a new layer with a layer mask or something like that. This is because it's actually going to, you can see, in fact, when we tick on decontaminate colors, we don't get the layer mask or the selection options any longer. You have to output to some kind of new layer or new document if that's your thing, because you're actually changing the pixels. So Adobe wants you to output to a new layer, so you still have that original layer. We're not going to decontaminate. We're not going to decontaminate the color. You know what? Actually, we will decontaminate the colors because I want to go with the new layer with a mask just to kind of show you something. All right, that's great. You can tick on Remember Settings as well, and that's going to kind of remember all of these settings here if we open up the Select and Mask workspace again in this image or any other image moving forward. Now, before we get out of here, we do have the sort of Refine Edge Brush tool, and what this is going to do is we can kind of paint over something like her skin here and just, in theory, get a more precise selection. It's not really meant for stuff like this. It's more meant for, you know, when you have a soft edge. Oh, look at that. We've got it set to subtract. Let's add. Let's go ahead and paint over this edge down here. And you can see it'll just clean up the edge a little bit. It's really good for painting over the edge of something like hair. Very complex selections, or very complex selection edges, I should say. It can be great for that. Brush, literally, you're just painting other bits in the image that you want to select. So I would go ahead and set this to plus. I'll go ahead and set it to plus if it allows me, or maybe I'll just hold down the Shift key. There we go, and I can go ahead and paint anything that I like. And my tablet just kind of wonked out on me for a second. All right, so you also have your lasso tool, and the cool thing about the lasso tool is whatever you select, literally just boom, gets selected like that. So that's kind of neat. That could be really useful, really fast for just grabbing huge swaths of your image before you go ahead and really refine an edge. That can be helpful. And then hand and magnifying glass are hand and magnifying glass. I think we all know what they do. So go ahead and hit OK. And you can see we now have this dress up on, well, it's a new layer, but the whole thing is there. It's just masked just to that dress area. So like at this point, if we wanted to just make this like a silver dress, we could go ahead and do something like a gradient map, just a black to white gradient map. We'll just reverse it so we actually have black to white, and then just clipping mask or clip it to the layer beneath by holding down Command, Option, and the letter G. That would be Control Alt G on the PC, and you can see her dress is now silver. Now the selection needs a little bit of work around the edges. You can see her fingers are kind of dipped in silver here in the middle of her chest, also by the base of her neck. Not the most precise selection, but you know, we're still getting used to this whole select and mask workspace, and you know, we quite frankly didn't spend that much time even going over and making the selection. So you can see what a little bit of time can do. In fact, I'm going to delete this layer that we just created, and I saved out a selection that I made just a little bit earlier when I took a little bit of time, and I'll turn on the Silver Me Brah group here and just apply a layer mask, and it's going to apply it just to that selection, and you can see how beautifully the entire dress was selected when I just cleaned up the edges a little bit, made sure her fingers weren't dipped in silver, and so on and so forth. So you can get really precise selections really quickly, and it's just a really amazing new tool in Photoshop. Yes, it's going to take a little bit of time to get used to and figure out all the little, you know, bells and whistles and things like that, but it's definitely a great little feature in Photoshop, and something that I think you're really going to appreciate as you move forward. Just one nice big, simple area to create and refine all of your selections here in Photoshop. And you can see here, we've got this beautiful silver dress now. So now the next new feature in Photoshop is called Match Font, and it allows you to do just that. Select an area that contains a font that you don't know what it is. Maybe it's just an image, a book cover, a movie poster, something like that. Photoshop will attempt to identify the font or suggest a similar font. Let's check it out. So right here we've got this flattened UI kit here. I got this downloaded it from 365psd.com. In fact, you can follow the actual designer David Minty over on Dribbble. You can check out all of his work over there. Cool. All right, so let's say we're looking at this and we don't have access to the PSD in a theoretical world, and we want to figure out what this font right here is. Here's all you need to do. Grab a selection tool like the rectangular marquee, rectangular marquee tool, and drag a very tight selection out around your text. Now, Photoshop, well, let me make another selection here to make it a little bit more perfect than that. There are some sort of best practices, if you will, and one of them is, number one, to include a single line of text, not multiple lines of text, to closely crop your selection, kind of as close to the text as you can get it, particularly on the left and right edges. So, just the sides, make sure they're tucked in nicely, and also don't mix typefaces. So don't try to get even if it's in the same line, several different typefaces. Stick with one typeface, one style, things like that. Now that we've done that, we can go, it's pretty simple here, type, match font. And Photoshop's going to say, all right, well, here's some similar fonts, and also, by the way, some fonts available on Typekit. So this is kind of a neat little feature. You can very quickly, say, all right, well, I'm going to go with Jinky Regular or whatever. I don't know how that's similar at all. It looks very, very different. But at least the first two might be something that could potentially work for what we're doing here. So match font in Photoshop. I'm just going to deselect my little selection there. Match font in Photoshop. It's completely brand new, and I think it can be really helpful because there definitely are many, many times where I'll go through and I'll be looking for a particular font, trying to match something to something maybe that's a pre-existing design or something that another designer did for a client before you even got there. So match font in Photoshop, it's a great new feature. Now, the next feature that we're going to talk about in Photoshop is content-aware crop. You've probably heard of content-aware fill and content-aware a lot of other things, like it's used in the healing brush and content-aware scale and so on and so forth. Content-aware crop, though, is pretty neat. It allows us to crop an image, or really kind of uncrop an image, if you will, stretch an image beyond where it was, and Photoshop will do its best to fill all of those areas in as effectively as possible. Let's take a quick look at this here. So I've got this image of this girl. Let's grab the crop tool. Now, we're using the new crop tool, by the way. If under the settings icon here you have this set to classic mode, you will not have access to the new Content Aware feature. We're going to tick on Content Aware, and let's just say we wanted to make this whole scene maybe a little bit smaller. Let's actually clear this. We don't need necessarily the original document ratio. And let's say we want to pull the image off to this side a little bit further, and maybe even actually off to this side a little bit further, just to generally widen things. Well, you can see there are no pixels here to fill in that part of the image. So what happens? Well, let's see how well Photoshop does this. I actually haven't even tested this. Let's see what it does. Here we go. Not too bad, actually. I mean, you can see it's a duplicating pattern over here, but it's actually not too bad because it was actually a repeating pattern, and Photoshop simply kind of went a little ham with it. Maybe we would correct that a little bit, just because maybe it should be hanging down a little bit further, something like that. But over here, not too bad at all. So we've gone in and we've kind of stretched this image beyond where it was, and Photoshop's automatically filled in those edges. Now, what about a little bit more of a practical use, maybe that you would use on more of an everyday basis? Here we've got a photo of a very freezing looking scene, and we can see that it is not level, right? It should be level across the middle. So with the crop tool selected, we can go ahead and just dink, say right about there, maybe something like that. We could even stretch this out just a little bit, maybe. And let's see how content-aware crop handles this. Let's see what kind of a job it does. It's tricky. There's some mountains. It's not just a little bit of sky and grass on the corners. We're really going to push the limits of this tool. And look at that. It's leveled it. It's extended the mountain. Maybe we would need to just trim that little peak, extra peak there that's showing up. But it's really done an impressive job and filled in the ocean and the sky and everything that needed to be filled in that quickly. So for an image like that one, content-aware in the crop tool or on the crop tool, you can see it's extraordinarily valuable. Just allows us to just boom, straight an image without even really having to crop something down. This would be very useful for panoramic images, where a lot of times you're going to set your panorama up and you almost always at least need to fill corners here or there. Maybe there's a belly in the bottom of the image, something like that. Content aware on the crop tool should really help out with something like that. Now, next up, we've got a bit of an enhancement from Photoshop, but it's not really a Photoshop only. It's more of a Creative Cloud thing, but it directly relates to Photoshop, and it's Adobe Stock. They've kind of changed the way you can license images and made it even easier. Don't sleep on Adobe Stock, by the way. I've slept on them for a long time. There's a lot of amazing images on this particular stock photography database. They've got some great high-quality stuff. We're going to take a look at it. Let's jump in here into Adobe Stock and take a look at what exactly I'm talking about. Now, I am signed in. All you need to do is be signed in with your Creative of cloud user ID or whatever they call it, Adobe ID, I guess. We're going to search for a double exposure image. So we're going to go double exposure. And then over here, I'm going to just choose, don't sort by relevance. Go ahead and sort by downloads. Let's see what the most popular double exposure images are. And let's just grab the first, let's grab the second one here. All right, so we've got kind of this neat looking image here. And we have some options. Open preview in Photoshop or license it and then open it in Photoshop. Now, if you license it and open it, you're essentially buying it right out of the gate. But let's just say we're working on a project. We don't know if this is going to work for us or not. Let's just open the preview in Photoshop. It's going to say, hey, please wait. There you go. Your preview is saved to the computer. And here we are back in Photoshop. The document that we had open, this sort of test comp is placed in the middle of it. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit enter to drop that file in. You can see there it is. It's got the little cloud icon. I'm going to open up my video player. I can see my artwork right there on that layer. We're going to drag our image down. Whoops, I double clicked. Let's just close that. When you double click, it brings you sort of inside of the image. I'm going to drag the image down. It's automatically clipped to our old artwork. I will turn it on and then I'll just resize it. Command or Control T. Well, you know, it doesn't really need to be sized much, does it? I'm just going to nudge it downward a little bit. Something just like that. And we can see, just like that, we have our artwork in place. Maybe I'll even shut off that little vibrance saturation adjustment that we had going on there. You can see we now have the new image in our video player UI that quickly. Now, if we send this to the client, they say, hey, we love it. We absolutely love it. Go ahead, get it. All you need to do is right-click on that layer and choose License Image. And if I hit that, what's going to happen is Photoshop's going to say, look, we're licensing this Adobe stock image. This is one of your 50 licenses. Go ahead. I'm going to say, yep, go for it. Let's do this thing. And you're going to see here in just a second that Photoshop is going to have our stock photo placed right there in place. The watermark is gone. The little numerical thing is gone. And that quickly, we picked out a photo from Adobe stock. We brought it into our Photoshop document, we placed it, we made sure it worked, and then just one click, or well, two clicks, a right click and a regular click, and we licensed the image for use in our project. It's that fast, it's that easy. It's pretty amazing. There's a lot of great images that can be chosen and can be had on Adobe's stock photo website. You got to check it out. So the next little enhanced feature, or added feature I really should say, it's quick, it's easy, it's the ability to embed color profiles in your exported assets. So I have this image here, I'm just going to export this one layer, so I'm going to go File, Export, Export As, and we're going to see here our Export As dialog box comes up. Now, you get this only with JPEG or PNGs. Let's go JPEG. You can now just tick on Embed Color Profile in addition to converting to something like sRGB when you go ahead and export your image. So next up we have something called On-Canvas Glyph Alternatives. This is kind of neat. Let's check it out. So right here in this little bit of text I have, well, Henley Bond, but then I have a pound sterling mark. And you can see I've got it kind of doubled and tripled up. I'm going to get rid of a couple extra copies of this. Maybe just set it to the blend mode of overlay. There we go. Cool. Now let's say we wanted to see if there's any alternatives to this particular glyph. Well, if we double click into our text layer and all I do is highlight the glyph, you can see I get this new on-canvas pop-up that says, hey, look, there is actually kind of a shorter compressed version of this. Would you like to do that? And I can say, oh, yeah, I can check it out. No, I don't really like it. I'm going to go back to the original. Great. And I can commit the change. Now, if you don't like this, if you're going to find it to be distracting, you can shut it off. You can go into your preferences, Command or Control K, and you can go down to Type, and you can choose, well, you can tick off, I should say, Enable Type Layer Glyph Alternates. So you can just uncheck that. I don't know why I had difficulty saying the word alternates. Alternates. Enable type layer glyph alternates. You can uncheck that and boom, it will go away and only come back when you decide that it should come back. Now, one of the other advancements or enhancements in Photoshop is the ability to print your 3D models as 3D manufacturing format files, 3D MF files. Now, I have neither a 3D printer here nor a 3D model to print. In fact, I really don't delve into the 3D world that much. I have jumped into it occasionally. It is a lot of fun. But that is one of the enhancements to the new Photoshop CC 2015.5. And if you're doing 3D, definitely something of note that you might be interested to hear in. And also, if you are working on a Windows machine, when Photoshop exports this, or generates, I should say, this 3D MF file, it's going to automatically open Microsoft's 3D Builder so you can continue working on that 3D model in there. So just know a little 3D update as well. There are also a few cool little improvements to the artboards and artboard functionality in general. One of the things you can do is you can go ahead and just duplicate something from your original image right to an artboard or from artboard to artboard. So let's say we want to duplicate this map. We can grab the map, we can hold down our Alt or Option key, and and we can just duplicate it and drop it right into the artboard. Now, you can also do this right here in the Layers panel. You can just hold down Alt or Option, drag it, drop it right on the artboard. Boom, it's dropped right into the middle of the artboard. We can drag it from this artboard. I'm holding down the Alt or Option key, drop it in Artboard 2, and bam, it gets dropped right in that artboard as well. And we can line it all up. We can do whatever we want with it. So that's all pretty cool. You can also select an artboard and go into your Properties panel and set the background color of the artboard. So instead of it just being white or black or transparent, well, some of those are new features, in fact. You can also choose Other, and this one's particularly interesting to me because let's say we're working on this project. Well, we can sample that exact gray from the background, and boom, our artboards are going to have that same nice gray background as well. There are also some advanced or enhanced, I should say, features when you go and export your artboard. So if we go File, Export Artboards to PDF, of course you can choose where to save them, names, all of that. You can choose to include that background in the exported file. You can also include the name of the artboard, things like setting a custom font size and font color, different things like that. You can do all of this stuff when you export your artboards to PDF. All of this is sort of an enhancement to the artboards functionality here in Photoshop. And certainly if you're working on UIs and different user interface design type work, you're going to find that kind of stuff really important and really interesting and really helpful. Now, one of the other things that Adobe is saying with this latest update to Photoshop is that Photoshop CC will now open documents faster and be a little bit more responsive. And also, speaking of content-aware crop earlier in this tutorial, content-aware, they purport will work 3 times faster. And stuff like the font drop-down menu, when you go and preview your different fonts, which can take some time to load, especially if you have a slow computer, by the way. If it is slowing you down, go into Preferences and make sure you set the preview size of your font a little bit smaller. That can help with speed, but that's supposed to be up to 4 times faster. So just overall speed enhancement and improvement Adobe is claiming to have here with this latest update. Again, I haven't put it through any kind of like crazy testing or anything like that, but hey, that's what they're saying. Now, Adobe has also made it easier for you to kind of port your assets or copy and paste your assets from Photoshop over to Adobe Experience Designer, Adobe XD. If you haven't checked it out and you have, well, the full Creative Cloud subscription, you can just go ahead and download it. It's free. It is specifically a designer's tool, a user interface designer's tool. If you are building any kind of mobile apps or prototyping or UI type stuff, this, I think at least, is going to be or is kind of turning into Photoshop's primary sort of counterpunch to the Sketch app. So this Adobe XD, Adobe Experience Design CC, is now going to work a little bit better with Photoshop, kind of hand in hand, getting assets from one to the other, and I guess back and forth. So check that out. Also, by the way, before I move on to a couple little things, also we have Adobe Portfolio now, which will allow you to go in and just showcase your work very beautifully, very simply. You can check out all the examples, things like that, but I think the thing we're all interested in is pricing, $10 a month, but you'll also get access to Photoshop and Lightroom. So if you're already paying for that access to Photoshop and Lightroom, see if this is included or re-up and get this. Or, of course, if you're already paying the $50 for the entire collection of Adobe Creative apps, go ahead and re-up and you'll get your portfolio website. Now, the domain name is going to be a mycustomdomain.myportfolio.com. If I recall correctly, that is what it is. But, you know, hey, it's still something interesting. It's another thing that Adobe is going to provide for you. And if you're already paying for your Creative Cloud subscription and you don't have a website or you can't afford a website or you're picking one or the other, whatever it may be, I don't know, you got something for free here. And they look pretty nice. They're pretty simple. They're pretty clean, things like that. It looks like it's easy to upgrade or update your work and get things up online and moving ASAP. So in addition to those demonstrations that I've given you, I've got a few other notes here from Photoshop. We've got up to 65% improvement in the Photoshop app download speed. I guess they made the file size smaller or something. You also have the option to revert to the legacy Photoshop CC 2014 behavior for the healing brush. All you need to do is go Preferences, Tools, and tick on Use the legacy healing algorithm for the healing brush. The fonts are all grouped now based upon style, so one font doesn't take up like 10 spots in your little font drop-down menu. menu. They're all kind of grouped, and you can click the little arrow to drop down and see all of the different bold and italicized variations of that font. What are some other things here? The document layer count is now displayed both in the status box and the info palette. That's kind of cool. There is an info panel option to always show composite, that is all the layers values, so that's pretty cool. The oil paint filter now works on lower end graphics cards, which is kind of neat. There is support for graphics card GPU accelerated features over remote connection, so if you're working from home dialing into your company's server, you can use those GPU rich features in Photoshop. That's cool. And again, once more, just overall improvements to kind of all of the content aware features: better preservation of image details, a reducing of blurring and smudging, improved color adaptation, specifically for content aware fill, I should say, and again up to that 3 times speed improvement, so that's great. You got the small color swatch sizes available again in the swatches panel for those of you who are big fans of the small color swatch. Divide slices for those of us that are still slicing. I haven't heard of anybody slicing for years, but divide slices command, the limit for the number of times you can divide a slice has been increased, as well as general performance improvements. Now here these ones get me. Improved brush performance. I'm not really sure what that means, but it's there, so I guess, it's got a better brush, improved brush performance, and also general text layer optimizations. So if you weren't sure what the brush thing was, they got the text thing here as well. There is improved detection of problematic graphics card drivers, which, by the way, is going to help prevent Photoshop, hopefully, from crashing as much, so that should be a pretty cool advancement. The name or color value will now be displayed in the tooltip for recently used colors in the swatches panel, so that's neat if you need a little more info on your colors. You can add keyboard shortcuts to toggle the brush pressure controls, the brush size, and brush opacity, and also there's an ability to add keyboard shortcuts to toggle the airbrush mode for those of us that go ham with ye ol' airbrush. Also, multi-touch if you're using like a touch screen, or I guess even probably if you use multi-touch on the Wacom tablet. I haven't even tested that. I probably should. But instead of using 2 fingers swiping back and forth, now to go back in the history state or step forward in history, you have to swipe with 3 fingers. Also, color adaptation is now enabled by default in the Edit Fill menu, so that's cool. It's also been optimized and all of that, yada, yada, yada. This is important. 3D bit platforms in Photoshop no longer support basically anything 3D, any 3D printing. You can't get the oil paint filter. You also can't do like the render flames, render trees, or render picture frame. So that stuff is out if you're not working on 64-bit. The kind of direct Photoshop Behance integration, which I don't really know many people that use that anyway, it's been removed. Instead, when you go File, Share on Behance, what it's going to do is it just takes you right to the Behance website where you can upload your own artwork, kind of like you normally would if you just went through Behance's website. And also, as we mentioned way back earlier in this tutorial, that whole select and mask workspace, it entirely is replacing the Refine Edge dialog, which was offered in earlier versions of Photoshop. So, that's going to be it for this one. For the new version of Photoshop CC 2015.5 and all of its new features, or at least most of its new features, that's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one. Today's Moment of Brilliance is brought to us by Mirko Ilic, and his quote is, "Think 8 hours, work 2 hours." And I love this quote because it talks about the importance of pre-production and planning, but also the extraordinary importance of executing those ideas. Speaking of executing, go ahead and hit the like button for this tutorial, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and make sure you check out my newsletter. When you sign up for it, I send you a free Photoshop course that you're absolutely going to love. You can also follow me on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.